Welcome back to The Backmarkers, the F1 podcast for new fans by new fans. I'm Myke Hurley, and I am joined by Austin Evans. Hi, Austin.
Good morning, my fine friend.
Oh,
what a wonderful time
this
to
is
have
so weird.
a Grand Prix.
I have never recorded a podcast before breakfast.
Yeah, it's currently 12:18 in the morning here on the West Coast, and I've never recorded a podcast after 3 p.m.
This is
so
good. This
let's
is fun.
go.
I was thinking, is this the most extreme for the two of us?
It's got to be. It's
yeah.
got to be because, generally speaking, most of the races are much more friendly to European time.
Yeah.
But I think Australian is one of the few Grand Prix which is just completely out of there for everyone, except for our fine Australian friends.
Yep.
But we got a race to talk about.
Sure
I think we have a weekend to talk about. Thankfully, with a lot less explodey things than last episode, which is always nice to see. But I think actually before we go into everything, Myke, I think we have a couple things we have to talk about in the world of Formula One.
Yeah, so we were talking last time about the possibility of another American Grand Prix being added because Vegas was heavily rumored. And Vegas, baby, next year, there's going to be a race on the strip.
I am very excited, mildly terrified of how completely crazy Vegas is going to be when an F1 race rolls into town. I mean, talk about a spectacle, but that race is going to look phenomenal, even if the track might not be the most exciting.
Yeah, I think they are going
though.
for looks, right? It's basically an oval. Like, they're going for looks. But, like, hey, if you're going to race in Vegas, right, you got to go down the strip, and that's going to mean you're on the streets, right? There's not a lot they can do with it. Personally, I'm cool with it because it's going to be an absolutely fantastic looking race. And talking about time, the expectation is, now the rumors are saying, this hasn't been announced yet, about it being a night race in Vegas.
Yes.
Which I think makes a lot of sense. Do it in the daytime. What's the point, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that would actually mean that it is a Saturday night race on the West Coast for local time, which would be probably terrible for everyone else, but it'd be great for me.
No, not too bad.
Hanging out.
Actually, you do like a 10 p.m. start or a 10 p.m. race. I think was potentially rumored would be around the same time as the Australian race for me on the Sunday.
Oh, okay. So no big deal. Just wake up, head into the studio. We'll, of course, record live in Las Vegas because we're both going to go and we're going to expense it because it's a backmarkers business expense that we, of course, need to report live from the race. But
hey,
speaking of the race,
I haven't considered something like that, by the way.
So if anyone who's listening to the Backmarkers would like to come and join Myke and I, we'll be chilling in the pool in Vegas, you know, watching the race.
Palace.
All right, so why don't we catch up with what happened with this race, which was an interesting one. So just top line. Charles
Give us the
Leclerc
recap.
dominated
Give
the
us the
race.
recap. Come on.
Absolutely. So Ferrari's looking good as they have the last couple of races, and Leclerc dominated the race. So going through the order, we've got Checo Perez in P2, we've got George Russell in P3, rounding out the podium. And then going through the rest of the top 10, we have Lewis, who got a P4, very strong weekend for Mercedes. We've got Norris in P5 and Ricciardo in P6. Again, a very impressive showing for McLaren, especially considering what the last couple of races looked like. And then going down the rest of the points finishers, we have Ocon in 7th, Bottas in 8th, Gasly in 9th, and Albon in 10th. And we're definitely going to give a little shout out to Alex on a unusual race that absolutely netted Williams their first points of the year. In fact, actually, I believe Williams, now that they have points, the only team that hasn't scored points are friends in green and Aston Martin.
Yep.
Ooh,
They've had an unfortunate start, though, Aston, but we'll get to that in a bit. I want to give a little bit of context for this race, because this is the first Australian Grand Prix since 2019. It's the first time I've seen an Australian Grand Prix.
What did you think, Myke?
It's a beautiful track.
Yes.
It's a very
especially
good
the
looking
time
track.
they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see like the sun's starting to come down. You've got the lake there. You've got Melbourne in the background. Yeah, beautiful track. I'd love to go to an Australian Grand Prix in person at some point. But yeah, especially, we've had, the last couple of races of last year were in the Middle East. We had the first couple as well. So it's a nice little change of scenery to have a little bit of green out there. And obviously the the racing has been definitely changed because Albert Park, the circuit that they're racing at, has been pretty heavily overhauled since the last time F1 was in town to facilitate more overtaking. Because
like,
while it's a beautiful
all
looking track,
DRS that track, right? Like just every straight, every corner, it's just DRS everywhere, man. Let's just do it.
well, I mean, I know that there was a race a couple years ago in Australia that only had like a couple of overtakes or something. Like it was really, really rough, but certainly seems better. I think we'll have to get the final count. I don't think it was as much overtaking as a lot of other tracks on the calendar, but I don't think it's like as bad as Monaco or something. Like certainly some of the changes they did and the amount of DRS zones definitely helped out a lot there.
Yeah, I saw there was a lot of consternation on Twitter over the last week or so about the changes to the track with adding in, I think there were 4 DRS zones at the end. I mean, I don't know what it was like before from my own experience, as I said, but I found today's race really exciting again. So whatever it was that they did, I mean, it gets a thumbs up from me because it was close racing, a lot of overtaking. There was definitely not as much overtaking as in previous races, I feel like, but enough to keep me excited. You know, like when the race started, I wasn't sure, right? I was thinking, oh, is this going to be our first quiet race? But no, it definitely wasn't. And I'm starting to cautiously believe that there won't be quiet races this year. I think maybe with the exception of something, with the exception of the obvious ones. So like Monaco, you know, like but other than that, I feel like they have built. I think they've done a good job of building the cars this year. That there is always going to be some kind of fighting is how it feels, and that's very exciting to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement. They actually, one of the things that they did change fairly last minute, I think it was right either before FP3 or for qualifying, they actually cut from 4 DRS zones to 3.
They're
so they actually only had 3 in the race.
Matt and Kinnew in the chat saying they dropped it to 3 in the end, which is a good shout.
Exactly. And then on top of that, there were only 2 detection zones. So I believe it was going across the start-finish line, and then after turn 1 or 2 or whatever, those 2 zones had 1 detection. So basically, if you were behind there, you had a double helping of DRS, which certainly helped a lot of people in the race. But yeah, I definitely think it was an improvement. And also just looking at the way that the race went, it certainly seems like there's going to be drama for a while, even if the racing isn't spectacular, which again, we've got 3 races to prove that these cars can follow much more closely, that obviously, you know, they're still going to have issues with tires and whatnot. But generally speaking, it does seem like it is much more possible to race DRS aside. I mean, we even saw a couple of passes of, you know, like Checo sending it around the outside, which is really exciting. And I guess a little shout out to Checo. Obviously, P2 was great, and it was assisted by the fact that Max did not finish. But he had some really solid moves around Lewis earlier in the race, and I felt like he was doing his fair share of passing to make sure that he was up in those podium places.
Before we start digging into the race itself a little bit more, was there anything you wanted to cover from qualifying?
I mean, the Latifi and Stroll crash was bizarre. Now, if we wouldn't get struck into oblivion by Formula One, we would show a clip of it. But I would highly recommend
Here we go.
to watch.
Just these 2 cars are going towards each other. They exploded. There you go. I think that was how it went.
So it was wild. So there was some kind of mix-up because I guess Latifi was trying to let Stroll by, and then they passed him, and they wasn't paying attention. It's hard to describe. You really should go and watch. I believe it's the F1 channel. They have like a highlight of it, or a low light, I should say. Super bizarre incident.
Yeah.
And another issue for Williams and Latifi, which is not great. And also Stroll. It was bad. The whole weekend, I think, was bad for Aston Martin. Couple other things. Alonso was on pace for a terrific lap when he crashed in qualifying, which is unfortunate, which sent him to P10, and kind of his race never really quite came together. And Carlos was super unlucky, given that he was on track for a really good lap in qualifying. Then the red flag flew. He wasn't able to finish his lap. He wasn't able to get the next lap in. He started from, I believe, 9th. And then from there, oh boy. So here's the thing, just a little inside baseball, right? So Myke and I, before we did the podcast, we always were texting nonstop throughout the race. But as soon as we started doing the back markers, we decided, look, we can't burn all our good topics and all our conversation before we're live. When Carlos spun out and beached it, I was immediately like, Myke, I know I'm not supposed to text you right now, but oh,
It was pretty rough. He's not had a great weekend. As you said, like it was also Alonso suffered from the Latifi Stroll crash as well, right? Didn't he have a crash? He ended up having a crash of his own too, I think, right? But didn't Alonso have some kind of mishap as well as the red flag?
I think Alonso was the red flag that meant that Carlos didn't completely. I believe so. Yeah, because I think the previous incident was in like Q1. I want to say, or maybe it was Q2. But
obviously,
it was
I
an
didn't
earlier
watch qualifying
session
this week. I wasn't going to wake up at 5:45 in the morning 2 days in a row. I just wasn't going to do it, so I didn't see qualifying. I just watched a bunch of highlights when I woke up. So.
It was very late, and I may have fallen asleep at one point. Yeah. But we won't talk about that. It's fine. I watched the whole race.
Man, Austin.
Look, man, these are not good. This is try hard hours, right? I'm not out here to be a try hard. What, Myke, were some of the other highlights for you through the race? Because I know it was, for me, it was a fun race, but also was not the most exciting, especially when Charles was 5 miles out in front of everyone else for the most part.
All right, so I can either talk about the thing I would obviously talk about, or I can talk about something else. Which one would you prefer at this moment in time?
Talk about what we all know you're about to talk about.
My boys in silver. Let's just say Mercedes looking much more competitive this week in general.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Obviously, fine. George Russell, come on, boy. I was so excited. Third, he's got his first proper race podium. I'm so happy for him. As always, very humble. Oh, George saw the post-race interview, like he's still talking about, we're still gonna get it, we're gonna do it, But I was really happy with Mercedes' performance this week. I think they are doing the absolute most that they can with what they've got right now. They were just looking more competitive in general. Like the gaps to Red Bull were closer than they have been in previous weeks, and it is helped by the fact, like from an optics perspective, that McLaren massively improved in this week.
Yes.
Massive. Double points finish from nothing so far, which is hopefully some good news for Mercedes powertrains in general.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we've obviously talked a lot about the last couple of episodes, and that going into this year, they've obviously got all new cars, but it's easy to forget that also a lot of the power units have been pretty majorly upgraded, and the Mercedes vehicles have just been all the way at the back with the exception of the works team. So this is, I think, the first race we've actually seen Mercedes be competitive, not only with the works team kind of getting that P3 and P4, but also we saw McLaren looking far stronger, which, to be fair, it does seem like some of the improvement there is less so that they made a big gain, but just that this track was a little bit more well-suited to the way that the McLaren is kind of set up. It wasn't kind of hitting a lot of their more sort of weaker points. So I do think we have to take this as a little bit of a grain of salt. This is probably McLaren kind of performing toward the top end of what they can do at the moment. But it's definitely nice to see, and is also one of the things where the Ferrari cars, you see like the Alpha and the Haas, they were not the rocket ships that we've seen the last couple of races. They did well, they did reasonable, but it was not like, you see Kevin Magnussen all the way up hassling, Lewis Hamilton or something. Like there was definitely a little bit more of the quote unquote traditional finishing order that we're a little bit more used to.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about the McLaren. That it doesn't necessarily mean that something massive has changed, but I think what it shows though is that it isn't that the Mercedes engine isn't running as well, but it's not just that Mercedes can pull out any performance, right? Because how it's been for the past 2 races is Mercedes are finishing top of the field. The rest of the Mercedes power cars are right at the back. And that's now switched up. Aston Martin excluded. Aston, not a great weekend for them in general. I mean, think about it, right? Like maybe it's easy to forget. This is Seb's first race. Like he had a terrible race in the end, right? Like he did he end up? Was it he crashed? Right? Yeah, he crashed. He put it into the wall in the end. He came off.
Yeah, actually, I think Seb may have. I think if I recall correctly, Seb spun, kept going, and then spun and crashed again. Yeah. Which, to be fair, that corner was kind of toward the end, caught a lot of people out when they kind of slid across the grass, but. Rough. I mean, Lance was weaving quite aggressively, got himself a penalty for that. There was a lot of shenanigans.
Aside from the weaving, though, Lance put in a decent performance, right? Like, without that penalty, I mean, he probably wouldn't have stayed where he was without the weaving, but without that penalty, he could have ended up finishing in the points, right? But that just wasn't going to happen for him.
Yeah, it was... Aston, I think, especially coming off the highs of 2020, right, where they did tremendously well and they were super super competitive. Last year's a little rough, but I think they kind of wrote that off as like we're investing in the future. And to be fair, they're spending an enormous amount of time and money building like all new facilities and stuff. So this stuff does take a little time before we really see the fruits of the labor. But you got to imagine the mood in the team is not super cheerful right now, especially if some of the rumors as far as the pressure that they are under right now. You got to feel for him. P10, 3 races in, 0 points.
And they are now the only team to score no points.
Yeah, that it's rough.
With Williams really getting a weird point. Weird race today.
Shout out to Alex,
wow.
Man. Latifi wasn't really doing much, but Alex did a mega stint. He essentially did the entire race distance up until the last lap on his original hard set of tires. Now, if you're a newer fan of Formula One, what you may not know is that there's a rule in that every driver has to use at least 2 different compounds, right? So every race they have a soft, a medium, and a hard. So if you start in the medium, you have to at some point in the race switch either to the soft or the hard. Even if for the lap, it doesn't matter, but you have to do 2 different kinds of compounds. And so what they were sort of banking on with Williams and with Albon is that there would be a safety car or something that would allow him to take like a cheaper pit stop so he can get in and out and not lose quite so much time. It ultimately ended not happening. But what did happen is that he did so well on his original set of tires that literally no one else tried to make it the entire race distance with, that even though it was the very last lap when he went to go pit and swap tires, he was actually able to barely stay ahead and get that last point, come in 10th place, and get Williams their very first points of the year. I know we're probably skipping ahead a little bit to the later part of the show, but that was a tremendous effort. I mean,
so did Albon finish in the pit lane?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I believe he was coming in for the end of the last lap.
Lap 57 or 58.
Ooh, I think so, because I think he got out, finished the lap, and he finished the last lap. Right. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because I don't think if you come into the pits...
That was kind of about the point where I was getting ready to leave home to get to the studio so we could record. So I didn't see everyone cross the finish line. But it was interesting. This was something that I noted, I think it was in race 1, where it seemed very clear that Lewis could have run the entire race on the hard tire. So there is definitely something this year from... It seems like these cars from a tire management perspective can do pretty well if they're managed well, especially on the hard. But I've got to say for Alex, it was a mammoth performance.
Absolutely. It was super impressive, right? And I mean, it's obviously been a tough start of the year for Williams. They've not been, I think, where they wanted to be. They haven't taken the step that someone like Haas has been able to do. That being said, Alex is doing a super job in the car, basically taking advantage of everything he can. And his teammate maybe not quite making quite such good progress.
I want to talk about Latifi again in a second, but I just want to confirm from Nicola and Damien in the chat. Because we stream and record this live on YouTube straight after every race, you can come in and hang out with us. We're also, something we hadn't mentioned before, we hang out after we finish recording. So after we finish recording, we're always hanging out, doing a bit of Q&A with the people who are watching live on YouTube, just because as we're setting stuff up and stuff. So if you want to be a part of it and join us live after every race, go to backmarkers.live. That's where our YouTube channel is. You'll be able to follow along live. But Nicola and Damien confirmed that he did do 1 full lap on the medium, so he must have changed on 57. And Nicola said he came out 0.3 of a second in front of P11 on that final lap to put in what he needed, which I would just say, like, on the fresh tires immediately coming out, and I don't know what he went on to. I guess softs, right? I'm going to assume he probably went on softs. Seriously incredible performance from Albon. You've got to assume Williams are feeling very confident with having signed him. But I want to talk about Latifi because we mentioned it last week, like, kind of like what's his deal. And we were looking into it. Me and my wife Adina a little bit. She's very good at finding out all this information for me. Latifi's dad is an owner or very high up in a company called Sofina, Sofina, who's on the back of the. But here's the weird thing: Sofina is a conglomerate company of brands. So no one really. Sofina is not a brand name you'd know. It's like if they put Yum brands right on the back of a car. So it's like you don't really know the the companies as a part of Yum Brands. There's like KFC.
Interesting.
So it's interesting. So it's the Safina branding, but it would probably I think it would make more sense if they maybe just picked some of the more consumer-facing brands for that. But that's where the money's coming from for Latifi. Mm-hmm. I've got to ask the question of Williams. Is it worth it for them? Like, I was incredibly surprised when they kept him on because I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know that he was a big sponsor driver previously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it should say something that as a couple of, I would say, fairly hardcore F1 fans at this point who have stared at a Sofina logo on a Williams for a couple years, that neither of us had even registered that existed.
Don't know what that is, don't care. That's how I feel about some of them. Like, whatever. Some brands, I'm like, what is that? But that one, nope. I don't know why. It's like, doesn't mean anything.
God, yeah, a rough weekend for them. Mm-hmm. But on the absolute polar opposite end of things, talk about a dream weekend for Ferrari. Asterisk if you're on the right side of the garage.
Yeah, half the team dream, other half not. Right. So two things I wanted to say about Leclerc. One is he looked like he was porpoising much more aggressively than a lot of the other teams to me, like when he was going down one of the straights. And I found that interesting because the whole conversation is, Mercedes, they're porpoising, they can't find the speed. But I think it's clear to see that it's not just that for them, right? Because if Ferrari were porpoising, but he was a good 20 seconds ahead of Red Bull, so.
Yeah, what seems to be the issue is that most of the teams, although not all, I think Red Bull is one of the few teams that doesn't visually seem to have a lot of the porpoising issues, which again, if you're new to Formula One, porpoising is a little bit of a newer phenomenon because the way that these cars are designed, the older cars generate a lot of their downforce from the top of the cars to push it down. These cars use what's known as ground effect, which means that a lot of what kind of keeps that car sucked to the ground is actually underneath the car. So essentially it speeds the air up, kind of compresses it, and sort of just sucks that car down to the ground. The problem that they're running into is that because these cars have to ride really low to make sure that suction is being maximally taken advantage of, as soon as you go over a little bump or you're going the wrong speed or whatever, it can sort of detach. And so the car will spring up and then suck down and spring up and suck down. And that's what the porpoising effect that everyone keeps talking about is. And one of the interesting things about the way that is happening to different vehicles, it happens a lot to the Ferraris, right? You see as they're going down the straight, they're just bouncing around. It looks like they're on like a super bumpy road. But the difference is that for the Ferraris specifically, it's only affecting them in a straight, which maybe slows them down a touch. But as soon as they actually go into the braking zone, start turning, it kind of goes away. Whereas with the Mercedes, they're still bouncing through the corner. And that's really where you lose the speed because you need to not only have the confidence as a driver to really send it into a corner, to hit your braking point and everything, but also you need that sort of the tires to be really squished down into the ground to give you the grip. And if you're going into the corner and suddenly your car is sort of skipping and it's not sort of settled, you're not going to have the pace. I think that's one of the big differences between Ferrari and Mercedes in that you can, anyone can get rid of porpoising if you crank your ride height up, but then you're going to be losing speed elsewhere. So it's just trying to find that right balance, which it doesn't seem like anyone has done super successfully outside of maybe Red Bull. But Ferrari have gotten a good enough balance where it might not be a comfortable ride, but it's a fast ride. And I think any race driver would rather be bounced around to win a race than spend a more comfortable fifth place or something.
Yeah, and you've got to imagine for a lot of the guys, it doesn't give you confidence going into that corner that the car's with you. And so I can imagine that there are, for some of the drivers, it maybe makes them feel uncomfortable, makes them feel uncertain. And then for me, my expectation is that there are some drivers, and I do believe that the Mercedes drivers would be part of this, that would dig in and find that confidence. I think George and Lewis are two drivers where they will push risks and limits quite a lot, so maybe they're clearly able to handle it to an extent. I don't know necessarily what it's like for the rest of the field, but
yeah.
Max's Red Bull dying.
Oh, Myke,
it's my favorite thing.
I mean,
I can't help it, right? I can't help the terrible person that I am. But when we saw that overhead shot, it felt good for me because I knew what it meant for me, right? It meant one of my boys was going to get in, and so it makes me happy.
So there's a lot there. Yeah. So in case you didn't catch the race live, Checo did not have any problems. So of course he finished P2. Max was finishing what looked to be a very comfortable P2. There was a couple times where he tried to get a little punchy, like on one of the restarts. Leclerc, I think, went a little too deep into the first, or I guess the last corner, kind of leading up into the straight. Max was all over him, but he couldn't quite get the move done. Ultimately, it didn't matter because Max had some kind of failure. Not exactly clear what it is right now, but it seemed pretty dramatic because he was fine. And then about 4 seconds later, his car was just shut off and on the side of the road. So, look, it is an incredibly bad look for Red Bull to have Max Verstappen, the reigning world champion, have a DNF out of 2 of the last 3 races. Like, that's just not a way to win a championship, and that looks awful on their part, right? I mean, at this point, if you look at the actual driver standings, right, Leclerc is miles ahead, not only of Max, but miles ahead of everyone, right? And we're 3 races in to a very long season. We've got over 20 races, sort of in the entire season to think about. But a lead like this does not just disappear, right? Leclerc is so far that he could just take a week off and still be comfortably in the lead. Now, obviously, we'll have to see. And I think it'll be one of the interesting things is if Mercedes are really able to get better on top of their car, because they really haven't brought a lot of upgrades yet. This is still mostly the sort of initial spec. They've done a couple of minor changes. But if Mercedes can get some upgrades and sort of unlock more of the performance of the car, Red Bull have completely squandered the first few races where they could have been at least streaking ahead and sort of solidifying that P2. So if Red Bull, at the very least, doesn't get second place this year, these early reliability issues will absolutely be the reason, because Max was on par for at least a couple of second place finishes that were just thrown away due to the car just
it's
not finishing the race.
It's made some massive differences. The funny outcome of this is now Sergio is the lead point scorer for Red Bull. With 30 points to Max's 25. Max is now sitting 6th in the driver standings. My boy George Russell up in second on 37. But that gap, right? So 37 is second, 71 points for Charles Leclerc up at first right now. It is a shame, right? Like, I get my joy out of it because I get what I want. I get my boys finishing there. But it's got to be really frustrating for Max. And I do feel for him in that, where I don't think is at the point of winning right now. I think it's very, frequently I think that Charles is the favorite and is the leader by a big margin. You can see it on the track. But he shouldn't have only finished 33% of the races so far this season. That is not good for him. He is the world champion. I don't know exactly what's happening. There was clearly some difference between Max's car and Sergio's car. They kind of confirmed that on the track. But, if I'm Max Verstappen, I'm looking at the team now and I'm like, you're not helping me out here, guys. Whatever the deal is, it's not going great for him.
I could not agree. I think at this point, it's really starting to look like the competitive order is being set. Now, again, we have to just reiterate, this is early in the season.
Very early.
Lots can and absolutely will change, right? But everyone's sort of moving forward at probably roughly the same rate, right? Like, no one's likely to find some crazy thing and suddenly be 10 seconds ahead, right? I think it's just going to be, everyone's going to be sort of iteratively working forward. And the question is going to be, some teams are going to take a step forward. Some teams are probably going to stay roughly where they're at. And some teams are going to fall behind, right? And so having a big comfy lead like Ferrari does right now, right? And not only drivers, but also in constructors, having the ability to not only have what clearly seems to be the fastest car now and to further develop it, but also having an incredibly talented pairing of drivers. I still think Carlos has a lot of performance in him. I still think he has some wins this year coming for him. But 3 races in, this could not look better for Charles Leclerc, and this could not look better for Ferrari, right? Coming off of the last few years of things being really tough, it's wild to think about that Leclerc is, he's like 70 points, like double. Like, it's crazy the kind of numbers that we're seeing this early. And what's even worse, like, I don't say worse, but even like crazier for the actual just standings is that last year, Mercedes and Red Bull were neck and neck. And I think Red Bull can challenge, but Ferrari seemed pretty comfortably the quickest car out there right now. So I want to see a good challenge. I want to see a good fight. But if this keeps up for even a few more races, that lead might start to look absolutely untouchable.
Yeah, I think though it is, honestly, to me, it feels like the season's been going on for longer than 3 races. Like when I just think about it, it feels like it's just been quite a heavy season so far. Like there's been a lot of stuff going on. We are so early in the season, and like, yes, Ferrari are at 105, 104, Mercedes at 65, but that difference is 2 first place victories, really. So there's still so much to play for. I was wondering today, I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with a similar result to last year, where Charles is the world champion, but the constructor is not Ferrari. I could just imagine that being a situation where you get someone, again, like I'll just say Mercedes for the sake of argument right now, for the thing being that both drivers of the Mercedes have finished every single race. So they are continuing to rack up points where their competitors are losing points for just not being able to put 2 people over the finish line so far. That kind of thing can make a huge difference in the long run, right? It's like Mercedes are really struggling right now, but they're putting the points in. And wins and stuff later on could make a big difference for them as they move towards the rest of the season. So I am very intrigued to see how the rest of this goes on. Like, I don't know, but I think we're still in for a really exciting season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see a shakeup, and I think no one who has red blood pumping through their veins isn't a little happy to see Ferrari up at the front.
I love it. I mean, for me, this is, if it's not going to be one of the teams that I would want, and there's a couple, it's not just Mercedes. I'd love to see McLaren putting in. I'm a big fan of McLaren and everything that they do over there as well. If it's not going to be them, I would like it to be Ferrari, because I really like Charles Leclerc. I really like Carlos Sainz. I don't personally have a lot of affection for Ferrari, the race team. I don't dislike it, but I don't, it's got all that history in it, which I enjoy. But like, so's Alfa Romeo. You know what I mean? Like, there's stuff in there for me, right? Like Aston Martin has a lot in it for me, just from like a what they could be, what they should be, looking at the car brand behind it. But I do like seeing it. I like seeing the red at the front. I really love seeing Charles putting this in, because it's such a surprise, really. To see where he is and just how monstrous. Like the race today, he has like a 20-second lead. That's a Max kind of lead. That's a Lewis kind of lead. That's what I'm used to to have seen in the last few years. But now Charles is putting it in there from seemingly, if you weren't paying enough attention, from out of nowhere, which is so fascinating, right?
Yeah, and which is why it's so nice to see the new regulations.
Yeah,
right? It's so nice to see
the real shake-up we were hoping for.
Absolutely, right? Which is good, right? Because, I feel like you look at, the last couple of eras, obviously Red Bull went off of years of domination straight into Mercedes, wiping the floor with everyone for, 6-7 years or whatever. And now it seems like the die has been sort of recast. Again, it's easy to get carried away. We're only 3 races in. But Ferrari's looking incredible right now. Mercedes has done a stellar job of what was not anywhere near the fastest car, still doing a really good job of scraping together every point they really could have gotten their hands on. And Red Bull have a fast but fragile car that just simply can't quite measure up to Ferrari right now. Yeah. And that's a concern. Christian Horner's going to bed tonight and being like,
yeah, fast but fragile is a really nice way to put it. Like, that's kind of the situation that they're sitting in.
It's not fast enough.
No.
It's quick, not fast.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's fast, not fast enough. It works, but not well enough. That's kind of the situation that they're in right now. Yeah, it's complicated. All right, let's take a break, and then we can start talking about some of our favorites and people that we're picking out from the race. And thank our friends over at Mint Mobile for their support of this episode. If saving more and spending less is one of your top goals for 2022, why are you still paying high amounts of money every single month for wireless service? Switching to Mint Mobile is the easiest way to save this year. As the first company to sell premium wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you maximize your savings with plans starting at just $15 a month. Look, here at the Backmarkers, we like to go fast. And Mint Mobile can do 2 things for you fast. 1, getting set up, right? You just pop the old SIM out, put the new SIM in, you're ready to go. 2, the speeds that you'll get. Because Mint Mobile is right there giving you fast, premium wireless service every single day, right, Austin?
Absolutely. And that's one of the nice things about it. Not only is it super fast to get up and running, but when it comes to your cell service, why would you want to pay more when you're not getting more speed or anything? Mint Mobile really kind of delivers everything all in one package, and it's super quick and easy to switch over to.
Yeah, because Mint Mobile, all of their plans come with unlimited talk and text, plus that high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network, so you're getting that speed. And you'll be able to get extra savings. So if you're looking for that, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. By going online only and eliminating the traditional costs of retail, Mint Mobile passes significant savings on to you. Use your phone with any Mint Mobile plan. You can just use the own one that you have, keep your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts, choose the amount of monthly data that's right for you, and stop paying for data you never use. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get that plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/backmarkers. That's mintmobile.com/backmarkers. Go there now. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/backmarkers. Our thanks to Mint Mobile for their support of the Backmarkers and all of Relay FM.
Speaking of back markers, Mike, I think it's about time we got to pick our favorite back marker of the race, because for the first time I think this year we actually had back markers.
Okay, but okay, yes, we did. Are either of us actually going to pick a back marker, though? No, we're not, are we? We're not going to do it because we both just want to talk about Alex Albon more.
Look, a shout out to Alex. I feel like we said it before, and I will absolutely say it again. He did a terrific race. It is not easy. So the thing to consider, right, is that not only did he make it all the way through the race on a single set of tires, right, which is very difficult to do. I think Pirelli had said that the tires would be good, his hards for maybe like 40 laps, and he made it like 50 something. But on top of that, he actually did a really good job. He was running P7 up until he had to take his pit stop, and he was leaving like, a bunch of other people behind who were really quick. Mind you, part of that was definitely that Lance Stroll was kind of holding up the pack, which definitely tremendously helped Alex. But it's hard to imagine him being able to do really anything else more in this race, especially considering that he got disqualified from qualifying. It's easy to forget that he was, I think he was like P18 or something, but they weren't actually able to get enough fuel out of Albon's car yesterday, which meant that he was instantly disqualified and had to start very, very last, which, to be fair, I don't think that would have helped anyway, because I think he already had a penalty from last time. But regardless, starting from last, making it all the way up to 7th, taking that last pit stop, landing in 10th. I mean, I know that we've given George a lot of props for his years at Williams for delivering some really standout performances, and I think that this is absolutely sort of in that same kind of category.
Alex is filling that role now, for sure.
Yeah.
But this is the thing that makes me sad, that they potentially have a car that if you put the two right drivers in there, they could be pulling in points results, low points results, but like that's a massive deal for Williams. They could end up like low midfield, which would just be absolutely huge for them. But they've got to have the right people behind the wheel. And look, we don't truly know, but from the outside, it's looking like that difference is remaining. And I think it's a shame. I would say just to pick a couple of other people out, to actually some people that didn't actually score points. Zhou Ganyu in at 11th again. He's
almost got
it. And Mick Schumacher finishing ahead of Kevin Magnussen this week, which I'm really excited about. And Alonso had a great race. Unfortunately, he was hurt on strategy a little bit there.
Yeah, man, I feel for Fernando. I mean, again, sort of just like Carlos, super unlucky. I mean, to be fair, I guess in qualifying it was potentially his fault, because it seemed like there was some kind of hydraulic issue where he tried to go into the corner and it didn't downshift. It's not entirely clear, but obviously incredibly unfortunate, because he could have easily been, top 4, top 5 in qualifying. So he started, and then just the strategy didn't work out for him. I mean, he was doing well for a little while, but he just needed like one more safety car or something at the end to kind of help him take a cheap pit stop, which ultimately is a big reason why George actually got P3. He was incredibly lucky. He was going in the pits right as the safety car came out. He saved a ton of time, leapfrogged a bunch of people, including Lewis, who I will say was Max-esque, complaining a little bit on the radio.
He was like Lewis was complaining about the fact that I guess the Mercedes mechanics couldn't see into the future. Like, I'm not really sure what he was so upset about. Like, he came in at the right time for him at that moment to mean that he was still able to get in 4th, right? No safety car, and he would have been 3rd. But you can't. I think this was potentially what got Albon into the situation that he was in. You can't always hope for safety cars and build that as your strategy, right? I think this is the same for Fernando as well. I don't know why he didn't come in during one of the safety cars. That just didn't happen. And then maybe they were hoping for another one, but it never came.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where it's tough to see these things, especially because, I mean, we did have multiple safety cars. It is a track that will bite you if, you're a little too greedy or you're not totally on top of things. But yeah, it was one of those moments for me where, I feel like I was pretty rough on Max last episode in hindsight. And then to see Lewis just like,
you were. I mean, it
really
was kind of funny. Most of the follow-up we were getting, it was all focused around what you were saying rather than what I was saying about Max, which I think is a new one. Let me just say, Max Verstappen, incredible driver, world champion. Woo, go Max. We love you, Max.
But Austin thinks that you're a spoiled.
I know.
Yeah, whatever.
You're a spoiled, entitled brat, signed Austin Evans.
Look, I just say much love for Max. Just saying, got a little of those vibes from Lewis as well.
Adam is saying that one of the things Lewis is complaining about is he did want to stay out longer. See, that was his thing. So I think that's where it came from. It is nobody's fault, as Adam points out, but him making that complaint that he made is Lewis's choice was to stay out longer. So he would have, if they would have done what he wanted by his thinking, he maybe would have been able to benefit from that. But again, we've been bitten by this both ways multiple times. We've seen drivers hit by this. There's nothing that could happen. But you can understand why he's upset because he wanted it. But look, at the end of the day, Lewis, you were fourth. The most that you would have got otherwise is third. It's fine.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, we always hear, if you're watching the Sky Sports feed, you always get the snippets that might not necessarily tell the whole story.
Yeah, they're picking the things that sound best, right, at any one time.
Exactly. You always want to hear those be like, why did you, my tires, blah, blah, blah. It's fine. I'm curious.
Can I just say on that, there was that moment where when Charles was like, can we go for the fastest lap? And they're like, Charles, you're good.
No.
You've already got it. And he's like, but, okay. But, and that was it. I just really enjoyed it was okay, but okay. And there was a moment where I was like, does Charles even know that Max isn't in the race anymore? Does he even know he's kind of just out there doing his thing,
And then on the other side, you had Checo being like, hey, what was wrong with Max's car? Don't worry about it. It was his thing.
That was so good.
Sure. Yeah. His car is totally different from yours, and you're fine.
Yeah, because okay,
sure thing, boss.
Is that 2 races ago where he went out and then I 2 minutes later flew out? So no. Very funny. Who was your underperformer of the race?
Look, I think perfect segue into Red Bull. Obviously, they had decent pace. They were clearly the second fastest car of the day. And Checo was able to bring that P2 in, which, again, is exactly what Checo's job is to do, which is to not only pick up the pieces when Max is not around to do so, but also just to sort of maximize the team sort of points haul. But look, we already went over it. I'll keep saying it again. It is unacceptable for the reigning world champion team to have 2 DNFs for Max and 1 for Checo in 3 races. That is, I know that obviously there's new regulations and, they're trying to get on top of the cars. I know all that. But these are the kind of gaps where Red Bull could be incredibly fast for the rest of the season, and it might still be difficult if Charles is still back there getting P2, P3 every race. There's a huge gap that Max has to pick up. Yep. And at this point, it's not impossible. It's certainly anyone's game, but a couple more races like this, and I think Red Bull may have dug themselves too deep of a hole, which is incredibly unfortunate because while everyone else has got a brand new car, I don't think anyone has seen, with maybe the exception of Aston Martin, the kind of poor reliability.
I think Aston's drivers are causing them problems, and it seems like Red Bull's car is causing them problems, right? Aston, today, it's because Vettel spun out. Thinking back to last year, right? The world championship was only so close because of the fact that Max had more DNFs than Lewis. That was why it was 1 point by the end. So these DNFs now will make a difference later on. I mean, they're making a difference now, right? Now they're making a difference. We're saying Max down to 6th now. His season starting off poorly, and it's not his fault.
Yeah, I mean, you figure I don't know what the math is on where he would have been, but I mean, he would have had two P2s, right? So he would have been, way, way, way closer to Charles now, and
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
it's
well,
it's
he would be sitting
unfortunate.
behind him, right?
Yeah,
Like for
yeah, but
sure.
with just a few points
Yeah.
gap, not like 50 points or whatever.
Yeah, I guess because that would be he won, right? Max won a race. Yeah, he won a race. So they
Yeah,
would be
so
it
Max
would
won a
be
race and
basically neck and neck between the two of them now, right? Because they would have been trading off one way and the other.
Yep. So basically, it would have been Charles 1-1-2, Max 1-2-2. So they would have been very, very close. Super unfortunate. What's your underperformer of the race, and why is it Max Verstappen? Because you love him.
No, Carlos. I don't
Yep.
exactly know what happened to Carlos Sainz today, but it wasn't great. Right? He had a terrible
man.
start. Terrible start.
Yeah.
And then he seemed to not be able to find grip in the car and just span it right out. And also, really badly. Like, he was lucky he didn't take out multiple cars because he went straight back onto the track sideways. It was not great. It was really not great. Like, there were other people that went off at that part and they kind of were able to keep the car in a straight line, right, over that grass. But Carlos went sideways and just kept going sideways, and luckily the Haas were able to get around him. It was not great, and it's not great for him. It's pretty unfortunate, I think. And so, sorry, Carlos. I love you, but I think you were probably the most disappointing for me of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give him some credit because a lot of his issues were not really related to him. I mean, he wasn't his fault that the red flag came out. It wasn't his fault that Ferrari literally couldn't get his engine started in the pit lane, and he lost a couple of minutes and came out, and he started really low. I don't know what happened with Carlos at the beginning.
I think a lot of the time the underperformance isn't necessarily focused on it being the driver's fault, but it is the way that the cards lie. And I was expecting more out of Carlos today, and we didn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, not in a weekend where he should have absolutely been easily on the podium. The fact that he was nowhere near it and ended up making one lap or whatever, super, super disappointing. I'm sure he's going to be very upset. I'm sure it's going to be a not fun debrief after the race. But these things happen. These are professional racing drivers. They understand. They'll get back up and they'll be back at it in Italy in a couple of weeks. But it is a absolute dream start for Charles, and it's pretty rough for most everyone else who wants to have even a hope of trying to compete for the championship.
Myke had just pointed out in the live chat that Charles got the Grand Slam today, which
he did.
Is pole in qualifying, winning the race, and getting fastest lap, right? Which makes him the 26th person to do that.
I don't quote me on this. I think Grand Slam is also leading every lap.
Yes,
right?
winning while leading every lap of the race in the same weekend.
Yeah, which is
amazing,
incredible. I mean. Look, I love to see it.
You do love to see
people fight for the lead. The last couple of races was great.
We're gonna get it. We're gonna get more of it. Like I have no concern about that. This Max would have been there with him. He would have been there with him.
Yeah,
but he just wasn't today.
Yeah,
it's really
Myke,
funny for me. I would just say for a second. I've been meaning to bring this up. So there's some billboards in London with Sky Sports promoting the Formula One season, and they're hilarious to me because it's two cars going at each other. Right, and the whole thing is it's only live once. That's the tagline, right? It's a Mercedes and a Red Bull, and they're like going at each other. Because two things they're thinking of there: one, they're just assuming performance stays the same. Two, they're assuming that the big rivalry this year is going to be Lewis back on Max. None of these things are happening, but it really makes me laugh every time. They were like, "We know how this is going to go." No.
Look, man, you got to print the posters at some point. You can't wait till the last second.
Everyone thought it was going to be this, right? But it just isn't. So that's just the way that it's going.
So I'm curious, Myke, what was your favorite thing from the race? Because I know for me, it was great to not only be back in Australia, right? I mean, I think, we have to remember that this is the first Australian Grand Prix since 2018. We weren't there in 2021. 2020 was when literally the entire season got canceled right before the race got started. That was a huge thing. And also it was, for me, great to see Ferrari up at the front. It's great to see them in the lead. But what I'm really concerned about is just them running away with it. Obviously, it's great to see Leclerc. I think he seems like a super solid guy, and obviously Ferrari deserves some wins. And it's such a historic team. But after we were absolutely spoiled with an incredible season last year, I think it'd be a little bit of a shame if the beginning of this era is just Ferrari just winning, 15 races and being, 200 points ahead. Like that would do a huge disservice, in my opinion, to what this season could be, especially because there's so much other sort of exciting things that are going on.
I would say for me, my favorite thing in the race was the track, because I hadn't seen it before. I hadn't seen the Australian Grand Prix, so that was definitely something that I enjoyed. I understand what you're saying about Ferrari. But I still stand by the fact we're too early, and I do think things are going to start changing. I think things have already started to change. We've seen that. The results this week look very different to results in previous weeks, and it's not the standings, it's the time differences. So like Mercedes were a couple of seconds away at points, if not less, than the people in front of them, which has not been the case. They have been holding up the midfield, right? In previous weeks, that wasn't the case. And again, McLaren, vastly different this week, very close to Mercedes. A few seconds away, but they were there with them. So I think we're starting to see that change. I think over the next few races, we move towards quarter or midway through the season, we're going to start to see more and more change. And similarly, Red Bull are going to get on top of this. What they've got going on, they're going to get on top of it. And they're going to be putting in more race wins. Max is going to be putting in more poles. Like, it's going to happen. But I do think it's fantastic to see Ferrari on top because it's fun. It's different. This is, this was what everyone, including me, was hoping for from the regulation change. There was going to be differences. The differences, depending on who you root for, are better or worse. If you're a Ferrari fan, if you're in a Tifosi, you are having a great time right now. What I love about this is I'm getting to see potentially a new world champion. And I love that, right? Because that will mean in the 3 seasons that I've been really focused on this sport, I get a different world champion each time. Now, if you look back from the 3-5 years previous, it wasn't that way. It was one guy. And I like this. I like seeing this. It's more exciting for me rather than being able to just naturally predict how the races are going to go. I can't do that right now. I would have told you today, I reckon Ferrari's going to win this, but I would not have predicted the order that we got.
Absolutely. And I think Damien in the chat has a great point as far as we really haven't seen upgrades on the cars. We've seen minor little things here and there, but I think now that we're getting back to the European legs, I think now that the teams have had a few weeks to start getting on top of what the real issues with the cars are, because it's easy to forget a lot of these upgrades are weeks and months in the making, right? Like they may have started working on some of these big upgrades, when they did the first test in Barcelona, 2 months ago, however long it's been at this point. So Damien, I think, has a great point that it is easy to see that we could be having major upgrades. Now, again, I just want to stress that obviously all the teams are bringing upgrades as much as they can. And, if they've got the money for it, it's a little different than previous years where the big teams would just throw everything at the cars every race, where everyone has to be a little bit more reserved and a little bit more conservative. But that being said, I do think that there could potentially be some shifts to the order. It's just a matter of who's going up, who's staying the same, and who's going down. And I think that there's no easy way to tell. But obviously, if you're already at the top, it's a good place to be and to continue to develop your car from.
Yeah, I mentioned this last time, but I was some of the stuff that I've been reading and watching is saying that the expectation is for teams like Mercedes, a lot of those upgrades would be expected by Spain, which is in May, which is 3 races from now. That's still some time, but they're making changes. You can see it. You can see that these cars they're getting tweaked.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, another thing that's important is just the teams need time to get their heads around these cars, for setups and whatnot. I mean, there's a lot of performance that could be unlocked if you get your ride height just right and kind of everything sort of tweaked and tuned as necessary. Something else to consider, all these cars, or at least most of them, are overweight right now, right? So in Formula One, there is a minimum weight that the cars can be, right? So they can't be any less than that particular weight, which 700 and something kilos. But the problem is that because there's so much extra like crash structure and all this kind of stuff that's involved with these vehicles, not to mention the fact that the tires and the wheels are heavier and whatnot, there are a lot of teams right now which are running over that weight limit. Traditionally, that's not the case. Pretty much all teams have been under the weight limit. What they do is they add a little bit of ballast to kind of like balance the car out, right? So if you're 10 kilos under the weight limit. Oh, you maybe will put a little bit up in the front or the back, and that's another way that you can kind of tweak and tune. But most of the teams are running over the weight limit, which means that not only do they not have the flexibility of that, but also it's a majorly big deal if you're running over the weight limit. Even an extra kilo or two that you have to drag with you for a race distance costs real time. I know that was actually one of the things on the Mercedes side.
Or that they're just heavy? Because obviously the weight limit would be a rule, right?
So everyone should be, traditionally, every single car should weigh the exact same, right? Like that's the minimum weight. There's nothing stopping you from running your car 100 kilos overweight. I mean, you could do whatever you want, but basically all the vehicles should be at the exact same weight, realistically, right? And traditionally that's the way it's been. However, because these new regulations have completely changed the cars, there's so much new, a lot of the teams just can't quite get down to that weight. So if you're running 3, 5, 10 kilos over, I mean that could cost you tenths of a second per lap
I understand what you're
across
saying.
a whole race
it's
distance.
not because when you say over the weight limit, that makes it sound like that they're illegal, right? But you mean is there is a minimum weight, and what you want is every car is on that minimum weight. But at the moment, a lot of them are higher than that minimum weight, which is making them go slower. Yep. All right, I understand.
Exactly, yeah. I don't. It's hard to say exactly how far. Like, Alpine were talking about it because they have those little like stays on the floors and whatnot, which have kind of helped to keep some of the flexing. But also, a lot of teams like Alpine have got thicker floors with more material, which just weighs more. So it does seem like most teams are some amount of kilos over what they could be, and if they can develop their way and kind of trim weight here and there, that'll just instantly unlock performance. Because you know what every race car ever would like to do? Be lighter, because the less weight, the less sort of fuel you need to push you, the faster you can go in the straights and the corners. Like, weight is the enemy, period, when it comes to a race car. So I think that's one of the other things that these developments will hopefully kind of help to improve.
Yep. So next race, where are we? In Imola, right?
Absolutely, which is really exciting. I know that that's not traditionally been a track that has been on the calendar for all that long. I know it's had passed and dropped off for a while. It does seem like Imola's got a semi-permanent sort of place on the calendar now, and of course we're going to go to Miami next, which I'm also going to be excited for after that. But we've got some pretty major races coming up before we kind of get into the standard European leg of races. I don't know. Are there any races that you're excited for? Because I know for me, I hope that the Miami race is
I'm excited for Miami because it's new. So we don't know what to expect. And I genuinely do like it when there's a new track and the drivers haven't raced it before. Like, I like that because they don't know either. And I kind of find that to be a fun experience where no one's really sure how the week's going to go. I think that's fun,
Absolutely, absolutely. Also, Trish is asking a question: do we like the helmet cam? Absolutely.
Yes,
I
and
love
no.
it.
Okay,
I love it.
I love it, but it's also makes me feel uncomfortable watching it sometimes. Like where there was one with Alonso when he's looking in his mirrors, and it's like it's a lot, right? Like it's a lot to handle. I like it, but I wish they were a little more particular about some of the angles that some of the scenes that they show. I think sometimes it can be quite hard to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. To me, I'm impressed with, like you said, that opening shot with Alonso, sort of, he's nonstop looking left and right in his mirrors and kind of picking his breaking point. Like, I think it does a great job of showing just how many things an F1 driver is doing, especially at the beginning of a race. But also, there's a good moment, as sort of Trish pointed out, when, like, Carlos was getting out of the car and his helmet was still on. So you see him, just undoing his belts and stuff. Like, to me, I like having that sort of first-person POV to kind of see what the drivers are looking at. It's cool. I think they're starting to roll it out to more and more people. I think actually one of the McLaren guys may have also had the camera. I think it definitely seems like it's rolling out.
It seems like they pick and choose, right? Not everybody has it. Because I remember last season they were doing it with one person at a time for a few races, right? But now it seems like there's more. I guess the plan is to keep rolling it out. I mean, I would like a higher quality camera. If they can do that in the future. I know it's small, and of course you're dealing with it's in the visor, right, too, which I think is part of the vision issue. But it is fun. It's a fun view. Let's say I wish sometimes that they were just a little bit more particular because some of the views they're rough. But I do like with some of the stuff like we're seeing with the bouncing of the cars, right? You can get that view more. You can see more of it. It's like it's another good data point for the viewer of like this is what it's like to drive one of these things. So that's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think maybe we'll wrap up with some listener questions.
Okay.
So of course, shout out to everyone in the live chat who's been giving us lots of great stuff throughout. But I know that we have a specific one from James who's asking, have either of you ever been to a race in person? And are there any plans to visit a race together in the future? Well, James, of course, for our future tax ride, I mean, our future great weekend in Vegas next year. We're really excited about that. So I actually don't know, Mike. Neither of us have firm plans to see a race this year, right? I know we're both talking about some potentials. If you're gonna go to Silverstone, right?
Well, this is the thing.
Maybe?
Okay, so a few months ago, they had a page go up. Give us your email when the tickets go on sale. So I put it in. And a few days, like last week or so, I was like, did they ever go on sale? Yeah, they did. They're all sold out. But no one emailed me.
You missed it. Oh no!
So as it stands right now, no, we're not going. I put my name in for like, there's like another thing where you can put your name in, to like it'll contact you if other tickets become available. But as it stands right now, the answer is no, but not through lack of trying.
Oh,
I know.
That's brutal,
I'm very
man.
upset about this because I really wanted to go this year. But as it stands right now, no, I won't be going to Silverstone. But I am gonna try.
Oh, that sucks. I have not been to a race. Last race I went to was the 2019 Austin Grand Prix. We had plans of going in 2021, and then this thing called a baby showed up, which kind of ruined some plans on my side. So, maybe he wants to come and hang out this year. I'd love to go to Miami. That's not going to happen. I would love to go to Austin this year if it's possible. Mike, maybe how about this? Instead of going to Silverstone, which is obviously a terrible track and a bad country and all this kind of stuff you never want to go to, why don't you come hang out with Austin and me? And again,
I would do
in Austin
this.
with Austin.
When is it?
I believe it's November. I think it's early November.
It's late October. You have no idea what you're talking about. It's the 21st to 23rd of October.
Close.
But yeah, I mean, I would do it.
Well, look, it's another great tax. I mean, a great experience for the backmarkers listeners. We're just here to
serve in the audience,
sacrifice our time and our energy to better make a show for you. Because I'm sure, what would you like to do? Watch a live stream of Mike and I's cameras shutting off every 5 seconds? Or would you like to see us walking around the paddock, hanging out with our buddy Seb and talking about how great Lewis's 17th victory in a row is? I mean, seems like a pretty easy answer to me.
It's funny you say about the camera stuff. So we do record this live. You can catch us live after every race at backmarkers.live, and you can also get the audio on demand whenever you want it. Austin's camera usually freezes. This week mine's been shutting off. I don't know what's going on. What I think is this is just the wrong time for both of us. Too late for you, too early for me. This is not the time to be recording a podcast. Before we wrap up too, I have a question from Damien in the live chat. As tech media presenters and folks, do you enjoy the chrome rims on the McLaren? I love them. I think it look
absolutely.
great. I think it look fantastic. They look great stationary and in motion. I do not like Alfa Romeos in motion.
Oh, I was about to say the exact opposite. Actually, I think the Alpha ones are the only other ones that I think I like maybe more than the chrome.
I love it. It might be my favorite. Yeah. But when they move it to what I don't like, because it's half red, half white, it flickers.
Yeah.
And I don't enjoy the way it looks like that. Where some of the other teams, it looks like it's more of a smooth color. Like the McLaren, it just kind of melts together. But with the Alfa Romeo, it looks like it flickers, and I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, I just honestly the black rims look bad.
They look terrible.
They look
unfinished.
So generic.
It looks unfinished. It's like you forgot to do something.
Yeah. So I like any team who's at least adding a little paint. I'd love to see. I know that there's some mock-ups before the season started, but maybe even adding like some LEDs.
Yeah, what happened to that? Come on, someone needs to do that, right?
I'm going to just assume that it's one of those things where they got to get the cars underweight, and then some intern's going to figure out how to like load up LEDs on some wheels or something. But I'd love to see that maybe a little bit later on in this sort of formula, a couple years from now or something. But Mike, I think it is very late for me. It is very early for you. I think the listeners are probably half asleep right now,
one way or
unless
another.
They're in Australia. Yeah, I think we got to wrap up.
Okay.
But thank you very much to everyone for joining this late night, early morning, wrong time edition of the Backmarkers. We really appreciate it. Of course, as always, feel free to not only subscribe on YouTube, again, at going to backmarkers.live.
Oh, can I say it?
So follow us.
Like and subscribe. It's the first time I've said it.
Like and subscribe.
Ring the ding-a-ling bell, as Austin would say.
You can also listen to audio episodes of the podcast at relay.fm/backmarkers. And you can also follow us over on Twitter at backmarkerslive if you'd like to get some spicy tweets that let you know that we're live, because
I occasionally
we go live
tweet
after
something.
every race.
I'm trying to do more of that. I am trying to do more of that. I want to do more tweets from the Backmarkers account. So that's the thing that I'm thinking about. How can I tweet some fun stuff? I haven't worked it out yet. Yeah. So as Austin said, thank you so much for listening. And if you have questions for us, you can send them in the live chat. And also don't forget, we do hang out for a little bit of extra with the people that do listen and watch along live with us. But you can also send those tweets in at Backmarkers Live or to me and Austin, and we can get some questions from you from the next race, which is in 2 weeks, right? Yeah. So
we've got no race next week, so a little breather, and then we're right on to the next one.
Italy. Which, I mean, come on, all eyes on Ferrari to win in Italy. Oh boy, the pressure. They have bad luck in Italy usually, so I'm sure that Charles is already feeling uncomfortable. Until then, thanks so much for listening to the Backmarkers. We'll see you next time.